All right, so welcome to the OmniGeometry podcast. We still don't know if this is going to be a thing or not, but this is where we're going. In the industry of graphic designer softwares or many different types, uh, OmniGeometry is obviously based on geometry. And we differ from some of the big companies as we're a small company, just two people. Sakari, which is here with me, which is the main lead developer behind OmniGeometry. As I understand you, you have a bachelor's in automation engineering, and the purpose of this is to know more about the story of how this software came about, because to me, I feel like it has a higher purpose. It can be used just for the sake of it to design incredible geometric shapes for apparel, for tattoos, for digital art, but it can also go deeper than that. So, yeah, without further ado, here's Sakari, and what I want to know, is like what was that first moment where you got interested, captivated by geometry or sacred geometry?
Yeah, so thanks for the introduction, Gus. Yeah, it's a little bit of a long story, so I'll try to find a condensed
Yeah, give
version
us
of
the
that.
cliff notes.
Cliff notes, yeah. So as I said, I'm an engineer. I deal with numbers and mathematics, physics, trying to understand the world through this language of math and physics and models and geometry and so on. But at some point, I realized uh, even though I've been taught all kinds of methods of how to calculate things, understand things, nobody
Mhm.
had even taught me like the basics of numbers, like what do numbers represent actually? Because
All
I'm
right.
a person who likes to look behind the curtains. I really like to understand things, and this is what has led me to understand computers also and really go deep with them. So I wanted to kind of understand what are these numbers and their symbols. And being a visual thinker, I
Mhm.
started to approach this subject from a visual viewpoint, trying to just draw like different uh, polygonal formation from these numbers, and from this direction try to see in my visual thinking how do these numbers behave. How does the why is the visual representation of a number 5, for example, why does it represent 5 different things and so
Right,
on?
right. Yeah.
Why does two, a symbol of 2 added to a 3, why does it become a 5? Like, what is the geometry behind that 5, 2, and 3? And
Hmm.
I really tried to like just start to draw those shapes,
Okay.
on paper and pen. But I quickly noticed that I really need some kind of um, way to see the relationship between the numbers.
Hmm.
What is the relationship between 2 and 3 and 2 and 5 and 7, 9, 10, whatever?
Right. How they
So
interact with each other, affect each other.
yeah. So this led me to uh, start this software.
Hmm.
Actually, I just made a quick prototype where you could visualize like a number 5 and 6, 7, 9, 8, and then I added recursion to that, the fractality.
Yeah. Game
Uh,
changer.
yeah, so this fractality of the uh, simple polygonal shapes that I had drawing in the program, I could adjust those with the numbers and the recursion depth, and kind of see how the shape based around circles and their ratios behaves when you adjust those. And from that perspective, I kind of like started to notice that okay, now I can understand, like from the polygon shapes, I can somehow understand the relationships of these numbers and their kind of like weights and how they form new shapes and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the beginning of OmniGeometry in a way, but there's like a deeper story also there. So we can go into that also like quickly in a brief way.
Yeah, absolutely. Because just to like just comment on that, like it it is in a way we take for granted numbers. We're taught numbers at school when we're little, and we say, yeah, one is just one thing, or two represents two. But I love that you went deeper, like what's the visual aspect, and then connecting that to geometry and how they interconnect. But yeah, I'm interested in like what was kind of the moment or the series of events where you saw or really connected to geometry or sacred geometry, and how that connected to the software, which back then was called Geocone, right?
Yeah, yeah. So that's already like a long time ago, over 10 years ago, 12, 13 years ago. So I can remember one specific moment, like when I was at work,
Mm-hmm.
supposed to doing my day job, software developer, but I was just like, I was really like drawn into just at this point. I think I hadn't started this software like developing Geocone, which would come home geometry. I hadn't still started this, but I was just like, I had this calling, even like a calling to just
Right.
don't do your work, just try to visualize these numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard to say like what the original spark to that was, but at that moment uh, I kind of remembered something that happened earlier in my life, like maybe 3 years from that point. I think it was 2011, 2010 when I started working on Geocone. And from that, it was like 3 years before when I had these mysterious experiences where uh, I started to see these clouds of geometry before falling asleep, and in that state where you are
Yeah,
not asleep but not awake, in the
right.
state between.
When you're entering the alpha theta brain waves, and you can
Yeah,
get into, I think it's called hypnagogic state, which I've
yeah,
had a few experiences where you can start seeing, hearing things. Awesome. So yeah,
yeah.
go
It's
on.
an interesting state. I don't know why it happened, but like maybe in 2007, 2008, I started like, I was stressed actually at work. So maybe that triggered
Right.
this state.
Okay.
I was very stressed at work
Mm-hmm.
and I couldn't sleep very well. But I started like going into this hypnagogic state, and I noticed that I'm not falling asleep, but I'm conscious about this process of my body relaxing, but
Right.
my mind was totally aware of that process.
Mm-hmm.
Like my body was completely relaxed and I could feel my body going to sleep, but my brain was completely aware what is happening, and it was pretty strange. And something very strange happened also during these experiences at some point. Like I started like seeing with my eyes closed in the state of not being awake and sleep, started seeing these clouds of geometry just kind of like hovering over me.
Cool.
And I don't know actually what triggered it. I was not doing anything, any medication or anything, taking anything like
Yeah,
that during that time.
it can happen spontaneously.
Yeah. So this experience where I started seeing these patterns, like, and this would repeat like over a period of 3 months, I think, where I would go to sleep and suddenly I started to see these clouds coming on top of me, and I was just looking at them like, oh, what is happening here? Like, what is this?
The download of
Yeah,
geometric forms.
yeah. And I had no, like, to be honest, I was pretty afraid, like, what is happening here?
Right, right. Yeah, yeah.
And But during that period, I kind of like somehow felt that this information or these patterns that I was seeing, that they held some kind of information or some kind of
Mm,
direct message to me that happened through uh, these clouds of geometry coming to me, and like they were communicating to me in a way. So it was
right.
very strange feeling.
So
And
that moved you, and
well, actually, during that time also it kind of like evolved this experience of seeing these clouds of geometry. It's my son. Should
it's
I
okay.
like?
It's okay.
Okay.
It happened.
Uh, so I evolved. This experience evolved actually to a state where I could somehow start to see what happens when I travel from being awake to being asleep. So I could feel and see the path somehow that some part of me took. Maybe it's my soul, maybe it's something like not physical that is moving, or astral projecting. That's
Yeah.
one term. So I could start to see, being conscious what happens during this transition, being like
Right.
very aware, just like looking at it like the it was like first the geometry clouds came, then I started falling asleep deeper, 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 and somehow also kind of like mapping the unseen world, kind of like just
Mm.
observing where am I going, what's there beyond the visible realms.
And
I don't maybe want to.
one quick question. Did you remember having, like, for example, your body buzzing, like vibrating a lot, especially the head?
Yeah, I remember having this experience of like cold, like a cold wind coming to this
Mm.
between my eyebrows, and having this many times I had this pressure behind my
Yeah,
neck. This like
I'm
very
sorry.
like,
Yeah,
yeah, and
I've
this
experienced
sound,
that.
yeah. So you know about this, and this sound. Man, a couple of times I heard this loud sound like boxes being crumbled. You know
Oh,
what? And
okay.
later I heard about Teres McKenna and his kind of like DMT experiences, where he was talking about this sound of crumbling boxes and the pressure in the back of the head. So I later kind of connected that maybe this was some kind of indigenous DMT happening, DMT flow
Right.
or opening in my brain, which enabled to see beyond the visible and so on. But I have not experienced that after that 3 month period.
Okay.
But, but coming back to this original question, I think this was the experience that kind of like later, 3 years later, triggered my interest and my memory that, okay, I experienced that, but I had no idea what happened back then. And now I'm interested numbers, and somehow I connected these two, and that led to a path that I'm still on, like over 10
Right.
years ago. So,
Yeah, curiosity about what is the nature of geometry? Why am I seeing geometry?
yeah, why am I seeing these patterns? What are these patterns, and why do we see these same patterns like everywhere around the world? You see these
Oh,
certain
yeah.
patterns repeating,
Ancient
and
cultures, different sites, all repeating. Yeah. Yeah, I'm very familiar with the state because I've had spontaneous hypnagogic states, and I also later on learned how to induce them. It
oh
was
wow.
by practicing lucid dreaming. I bought this book on advanced lucid dreaming, and it had a different set of techniques and even supplements you would take. And I would go through that process of falling asleep consciously with the body, and that would trigger out of body experiences. It would trigger going into lucid dreams. And I remember, yeah, it was like hallucinating,
Yeah.
seeing things, hearing things. And I remember also having that intense vibration that, in the beginning would scare the hell out of me, but then I recognized that I would be like, okay, I'm ready. Here it comes. And boom.
So was
Yeah.
it like this strong humming and like
Yeah.
woo, 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 woo? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So awesome. I didn't know that. But
I
it's
remember
kind of
actually, sorry, I remember
yeah.
actually like I was like 10 or 11 years old. I read about this technique somewhere and
Yeah.
I wanted to try it. And
Yeah.
I tested it one time and I could do it immediately. I remember
Uh-huh.
now. I fall asleep and I was riding with my bike over the building. Like I
Beautiful.
just, yeah. But after that, I couldn't do it. But
Mm,
when I was 11, I could just once do it like naturally. And then when I tried it after, I couldn't do it, replicate that effect.
nice.
So
Awesome. So all of those, yeah, experiences led you to the fascination. Uh, I'm probably guessing obsession with geometry for you to build GeoCone, which was like the first version of OmniGeometry. Um,
yeah,
and I remember, I think I found you in 2015, around that time, because I wanted to create geometric mandalas. I was very captivated, fascinated, and obsessed by mandalas. I've been using mandalas and I've been studying mandalas for healing, meditation, etc. And I wanted to create my own. And I remember looking at different softwares, and even though I'm fascinated by geometry, I'm not really a math person. Like I remember going to school, math, it was okay for me, but I remember when on eighth grade, it was geometry class. Like that whole year, we did geometry, and I loved it. Like I
yeah.
was fascinated by that. So yeah, interested in math, but not so much like algebra, calculus, etc. All those kind of equations, but geometry really captivated me. So yeah, I
Was
started looking for softwares, and I found you. And uh, yeah, maybe we should go like into that story of like how GeoCone evolved into OmniGeometry, right?
yeah. I don't know. Do you want to share about how you found me? Like, what was your experience like? Like,
Well,
what was the?
like I said, yeah, I was looking for a way to create my own mandalas, digital mandalas,
Hmm,
and
hmm.
I reached out to many different artists, and surprisingly, like not many were willing to help because they were doing something similar to what I wanted to do, and like they thought, I might, be competition or whatever. And then some of them did reach out, but they would, talk about like doing vectors and Adobe Image or other programs, and that was like Chinese to me. And so I started looking online, and I don't remember the website, but I found uh, your profile on a website with some um, designs that you've made, and it talked about like it had a link to GeoCone. So I
Yeah,
started using GeoCone. I loved it, and I said like, I want to meet this guy. I want him to teach me how to use it because obviously you're the creator. And so I did. I wrote you an email. Hey, I like your software.
yeah,
Can you teach me how to do it? And we started doing like
yeah,
weekly sessions. I don't remember. I think we did like 6 sessions, something like that, coaching calls. And you would
yeah,
teach me how to use the program. You would give me assignments on like to replicate designs that you made. And that's at the same time I was getting to know you. And that's when kind of the idea popped into my mind, like, hey man, we could take this to a whole new level.
yeah.
I mean,
Uh,
I remember asking you, and you said like, no, I'm not into teaching. I don't want to do a business teaching. I said like, nah, forget about doing one-on-one sessions. Let's do a tutorial. Let's do a membership. Where people can like watch tutorials and do it instantaneously. And
uh,
yeah, you agreed. You
we
said,
can.
I'm in.
Yeah, I think we can make it flow with this and cut away some stuff that I was actually like thinking about. It would be very interesting for the viewer to hear about this experience in the jungle you had, and that would be very like maybe.
Yeah, that was also another part. Well, yeah, thanks for reminding me that, because it was my first ayahuasca experience. And before that, I've been trying to create my mandalas. But yeah, we decided, my wife and I, to try ayahuasca for the first time, and we did it 2 nights in a row. The first night was like really rough for me. It was like the ego trying to take control. And when the night finished, I'm talking to my wife. She's like, I had a wonderful experience. I was talking to ayahuasca. It got really intense for her. And she told me, like, she asked ayahuasca to be more gentle. I was like, wow, that's a really nice approach. So the next night I went in, and I had the first dose, and then the shaman said, if an hour goes by and you don't feel anything, come back to me. I'll give you another dose. And I'm like, an hour goes by, and I'm like, hey, not feeling much. Give me another dose. And the shaman, like, he started pouring and pouring. I'm like, oh, yo, stop. It's pouring. And then all of a sudden I have like the cup like filled. Like, he gave me like twice or 3 times that first dose. I'm like, okay, well, I'm here, so whatever. I took it. I went back to my mat, and shortly after the first dose, I kicked in, and I'm like, oh, and I just took a massive dose right now. And so I started having this profound transcendental experience. And in that experience, I started to kind of see everything in geometry. First, it was like with eyes closed, myself, galaxies, the universe, everything, just anything I would think about, I would see the geometric structure of that. And then with eyes open, like everything. It's like everything was grids of geometric patterns, and how they would arrange themselves would give form to that. And so in that trip, I was like thinking about these mandalas that I wanted to create, and having a kind of communication with ayahuasca about that. And I said, please, guide me, like, help me find the tools, the people, the resources for me to do this. And shortly after that trip, I found you. That's how I found you. And in my mind, there's no questioning that it was thankfully for that trip that, I was like somehow the frequency match, and I was guided to you and Diocone.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And I wanted to go back to that because afterwards I also drank ayahuasca during those years after I experienced this thing, and I could also see the patterns there and
Yeah.
learn about the healing patterns that the shamans seeing, the Icaros and the ayahuascoeros who seeing these patterns.
Right.
And actually I learned that also that these patterns can be useful, that they would seeing these, what they would see, they would seeing into existence, and those would be like geometrical patterns that they would see these shamans in these sessions, and that would be healing for the participants. So
Right.
that's kind of like a very interesting thing to learn, that people are actually like using these patterns for healing and for looking deeper inside you. And this is kind of like something that these my ayahuasca trips after that first dream state experience also showed me, that these patterns somehow reflect actually the underlying structure of our reality, and somehow that we can utilize those patterns to make it more coherent. So this was a big motivation for me also to continue on this software. But I think I have to go get my son, let him in. I'm sorry about this.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Let's take a break. Yeah.
All right. So yeah, we're back. So yeah, that's exactly why I wanted to do this interview, so that people could get to know kind of the faces behind OmniGeometry. Another cool fact, which is weird, and is that we've never actually met in person. Like,
No, actually,
yeah,
that's true. Yeah.
yeah, like everything was online, and we've been working for years together. But yeah, we've never met in person, but I'm sure at some point we will. Um, but yeah, and OmniGeometry, like, how do you think, like, if I hadn't reached out and we had we hadn't worked together, where would be like Giocone? Do you like, do you think you would have developed a bit more or
To be honest, like I was very open source, like this kind of Linux open source guy back then, like
what?
really, and Geogone was open source first, but I noticed nobody's giving any code to it or any donate. Maybe I could get like $80 a year or something, as
Right.
donation. So it was not really viable for me to continue working on that software. So I think I would have somehow just it would have not reached the state that is really like smooth, and because you came in and you really uh, uh, like made it clear that okay, if we want to make this a world class software, we have to really develop it and really market it and really put effort into just bring it into a world class state that can be shared with people. I didn't have kind of like this mind state at this point, so I'm very grateful for you pushing me. Just like don't give it for free. Don't mind about what people are saying that this is too expensive or something, and like many people are just uh, asking like $10 for the software or something like this, and that was like my mindset back then, and it was kind of like not sustainable, and I couldn't have done it without your help. So
Yeah.
at this point we're in a stage where we can actually like develop the software and we can actually
Right.
like
Right.
deliver. Yeah, and
Yeah,
also like yeah.
it's incredible because it's a challenge that many people, entrepreneurs, go through, especially when you're in this realm of uh, which we are kind of in two realms, right? It's the graphic designer, art, um, design aspect of it, but then there's also the aspect of consciousness exploration, even spirituality, because of the sacred geometric component. But many people in that realm, these struggle artists and people in the healing or consciousness exploration with when it comes to money. And they have big visions, but it takes so much time, energy to put into that, like website, making videos. There's so many expenses that we have, right? To
Yeah,
keep this running and provide this service that many people are unaware of. And that if you take away all that and you don't have an energy exchange, in this case, as money, as a revenue stream coming in, then, you have to get a 9 to 5 and you cannot put all your efforts into the developing um,
yeah,
of that dream. So yeah, I think,
and
we make a good team, because you have that artist developer mind, which is what you really excel at. And then I brought in like a kind of a business perspective, and how, I can create a space where you can have the time, the energy to invest in this and not have to worry about, finances, or being stuck in a job that you don't like.
yeah, and like I remember also back then when we transitioned from the free version because it was free for everybody to use, and we
Yeah.
transitioned to the paid version. Of course,
Yeah.
many people were upset about this transition. Okay, it was free. Okay, are you getting like,
Yeah.
like, why are you asking money for this? But and also like, of course, like the network you have built, like that was like, it's like amazing what reach we have now with the social network is beyond my dreams. Like we're reaching hundreds of thousands of people every day, or even millions, like tens of millions of people. That's like crazy to think, like
Yeah.
coming from when Geocone was open source, we had like 2,500 likes in Facebook. Now we have
Yeah.
how many do we have like now? I don't know.
Like close
We have
to 180,000 on Facebook and 138,000 on Instagram right now.
Yeah, so it's like been a crazy journey to see that growth going from the visibility, like, and
Yeah.
people
So,
seeing that art, and also coming back to this connection of like it clearly resonates with people. So
Yeah,
these patterns and these images. So there's something universal there that works with everybody. There's
yeah,
no the patterns that you can create with our software, they're so abstract and they don't really represent anything concrete except in your mind it
right.
turns into something. So
Yeah,
that's a very interesting effect to see that people really love these images and love looking at these and love creating them. That's like
absolutely.
yeah
Absolutely.
yeah
It's that's why I was so attracted to the idea of going into this mission, this business, because it it does something to the person who is using the software, because first you have to be creative, right? And it's such an easy software to use that really unleashes the creativity, right? For example, for myself, if I was to draw a mandala on my own, yeah, I could do it, and I could, use the compass and the ruler, etc. But OmniGeometry is so much faster, right? And so many different parameters, just one tweak. It's incredible how sometimes you're designing something and you look at it, you're just like, wow, this is beautiful, this is stunning. And then you say, let me see what happens if I change this parameter. And now you add a whole new dimension. And
yeah
then,
and it speaks to you.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And then the idea that you have, the intent that you have, that kind of cements an energy into that art, into that mandala. And I've been so pleasantly surprised that we've gotten users who have shown us levels of OmniGeometry that we didn't even know were possible, right?
yeah, yeah.
Even to
It's
you, who you are the kind of the developer. This is your baby. You've been exploring this for more than a decade, and all of a sudden comes in a new user, starts tweaking the parameters, and what comes out, you're like, I didn't know that was possible.
yeah. I've been many times surprised to see what people create with our software. It's like I'm like my mind is blown just to seeing what people can create, and it's like I haven't, even though I've used 10 years and almost like I don't know daily, but like even like after 10 years I use it even every week. I do something with it. So there have been periods where I've been using like daily for months and months and months, and now it's like every week I try to create something. I still find new things in these patterns. So
Yeah,
it's so much breathing space somehow in these abstract geometric mandala patterns that they give new things to you every day, like you said, depending on what is your situation. And I actually learned that Carl Jung, if you know the famous
yeah, absolutely.
psychiatrist, I also learned a while ago that in his book, one of his books, he talks about that one of the major contributing factors in his life of finding from darkness to light
Mm,
was starting to understand his own mandalas. And so
mm,
he also found it very important for him to draw his mandalas every day, seeing the state of himself in those mandalas. And he also gave his patients practice to draw mandalas to see like what is going on with you in this moment, in this day,
beautiful.
and see yourself in the mandala. So I was very happy to see that confirmation from this famous psychiatrist also, who has formed the Western philosophical and psychological worldview actually. So he thought that one of the major things was understanding his own mandala. So that's a big thing, like, and to be able to somehow let people experience that themselves, that they're creating themselves in the mandala, and like wow, this is like wow, it gives this wow good feeling all the time when you do that. And that's like a big motivation
Right.
to continue working on this pattern, to give people access to this.
Yeah.
Uh, Originally, I thought that I would like to let people see inside themselves. So that's like the major motivation for doing this years to continue working on this. And I've seen it from so many people, heard it from so many users, and that they feel something magical happening there. But it's very difficult to explain in words. You kind of like have to experience it. So
Right.
I'm very happy we can provide people that the experience of seeing inside themselves. So yeah.
Which also kind of, as you were saying that, it brings into mind this idea about, technology is really taking over our lives.
Yeah.
And in some cases, very destructively, right? Addictions to social media, disconnection from the outer reality. And yet, I see OmniGeometry as a kind of healthy aspect of technology, where someone can use technology in a way to explore themselves, connect with other people, share that art, have an impact on other people. So it feels good to
And have that, like, have a moment of creative expression. Like normally you're just like, maybe you're just browsing Instagram or something, you're just like consuming.
scroll. Yeah,
You're trying to find something, but even though that makes you feel good in a way, you get the dopamine hit.
right.
But it's not the same thing when you express yourself. Then you actually feel good about yourself. Then you're
Yeah,
like, wow, I created this in 5-10 minutes, and or maybe 30 minutes. You go into that state of
right.
creation, and if the tool is like, because we spend a lot of time like trying to figure out the philosophy of this application, try to meditate with I want to mention Narayana, who wants to be mentioned with this name, who is the only holy man I kind of like know in my life,
Yeah,
and my good friend, dear brother Narayana, and he has helped me immensely in this process of trying to find the philosophy of what are you expressing, and how that kind of like, how that how you can connect really to that pattern in an intuitive and really like even a deeper level that you don't really see. It's not visible, it's something you feel, that feeling. Yeah, feeling of, like, a lot of things affect that, like there's so many little things in software that, and that when you create software, it kind of like OmniGeometry has the positive effect on you. OmniGeometry is tuned somehow to create beauty. Even if you sit down with it for 5 minutes, you will find beauty with it, like very fast. You will
yeah,
find the beautiful thing. So I feel this beauty is something that allows us as a small company, 2-man, 3-man team, allows us to, the motivation behind creating software is not money, it's not that. And I feel like in our current world, like if the motivation is money and kind of like just getting the fast dopamine hit,
right.
then that's not, it's like it's steering the boat in the wrong direction, I feel. So I want to provide an alternative to young children, kids, adults of course, but kids especially, to be
Yeah,
able to just have something beautiful come out of them and not just try to please the money gods,
yeah.
and sell yourself on the arena of whatever is the current trend.
Yeah,
So
that was very rewarding. Years ago, we got this teacher. He taught, I think it was elementary school or like middle school, and he reached out. It's like, hey, I want to use the software, but like for 30 students, and we, made a deal with him. Obviously it was for education purposes, so gave him a pretty nice deal. And to think like little kids were using geometry, OmniGeometry, not only to create, but also to learn, because it was a class. He was teaching them about numbers, geometry, and then they could see that effect. That was really, really rewarding. All right.
yeah, and that's the direction I really want to take this software also in the future. So just to share a little bit about the future plans is to get the kids positively addicted to this software if possible, or some variation of this software. So just yeah.
Yeah, and that's an amazing point as well. Like we are not done with OmniGeometry,
No, no, no.
even from the beginning, I told you like this is just phase one.
Yeah.
As technology develops and increases, we can create better versions, different programs under that umbrella of OmniGeometry. I remember, that name, OmniGeometry, because I was thinking about what name can we give it that it's obviously a good brand, it's catchy, but that it means something. And because I thought, of that, going back to that first experience of everything is made out of geometry, it's connected through geometry. It came, omni, meaning all geometry, obviously, geometry. And so, how from this we can see, future updates and future products that will be can be even more immersive geometry, maybe VR experiences, music connected to music, who knows? But the thing is, we're not done, and it will continue to evolve as we evolve as too.
Yeah, definitely. This is like a long play for us too. It's like many people play the short game. I don't like that the quarterly profits and so on. So of course that's good, but there should be
Yeah,
a as a society, and when you do anything, create
that's balance.
anything, there should be like a longer term plan, like thinking what is the try to just create something that goes away quickly.
Right.
So
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
like yeah.
Which is it goes in par with geometry, right? This is timeless,
Yeah,
ancient.
ancient, yeah, everywhere you can might find this pattern if you go to like holy places around the world. You see the flower of life patterns, you see the different mandalas everywhere. So it's somehow, and this has been going for thousands and thousands,
Yeah.
maybe hundreds of thousands of years, who knows.
It precedes humanity. I mean, it's the structure of the universe itself. So, like, we simply have the capacity to interact with it, to perceive it, to admire it. But yeah, I think it precedes the human consciousness.
Yeah, yeah, so that's like, yeah, it's a very interesting view that we have been doing this. It's somehow built into us, this want or need, or actually like to express these geometrical patterns. And of course, like as humans, we like to we want to understand, like really understand, and like you said, understanding and seeing that in this altered state, you can see it directly that there's a geometry, underlying geometry. I believe that there's underlying geometry behind everything. And it's
Yeah,
not complex. It's simple, but it's recursive. So it's
right.
repeating the simpleness enough. And I think that's where we go many times. We think too much. We kind of like, we try to think it has to be complex. No, I don't think it's complex. It's simplicity, but enough repetition and recursion and variables makes it kind of look complex.
Yeah,
So
but
this
I
is also, yeah,
that's also what I like about like this software is that it takes something that it could be made complex for many people. It appears complex, yet it makes it so simple. And
yeah,
in anything in life, when you study something, when you have a good teacher, is that person who can take something that appears complex or is complex by nature and make it simple and pass it on as 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 a very easy to consume, interact with, communicate with form, right? So yeah, I mean, thank you so much for taking the time. I think this it's a good moment to like wrap it up. I think it. I'm happy with with the conversation and how we were able to go a little bit deeper behind this software, right? It's a program, but there's very interesting history, the story behind it, and intent.
Yeah. And we can continue maybe in another video about the deeper aspects. That would be, I think that would be very interesting for people to hear,
Yeah,
but
absolutely,
it
absolutely.
might
Let's see
require
how.
another session.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see how this kind of format evolves, and uh, yeah, we'll create more videos. All
Okay,
right, Zach.
thanks, Gus.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much. And for you, viewer, thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the next one.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye bye.